And we are live with Phil Kearney, another edition of Founder Wisdom Pod, CEO Wisdom Pod, that is. Phil is live from New Zealand, so it's always funny when I talk to New Zealand friends because it's like 11, 19 their time. Here in Mexico, it's 5. So Phil lives in the future, and apparently I am living in the past. We're going to talk about arthritis today. Phil is CEO of Arthritis New Zealand. We're going to talk about how the diseases cause, what percentage of folks does it affect, if there's potential cures, how Phil's contributing to that. Before we do, just want to mention that the pod is sponsored by podpire.com, which is my podcasting company. If you want to start or scale a podcast, get great guests like Phil, get insights, and even get clients, podpire.com. Phil, I'm really glad to have you on. Can you tell us a bit more about Arthritis NZ?
Thanks, Charles. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's always good to speak to the other side of the world. So easy. Hey, Arthritis New Zealand, been going 50 years. So we're a charity. So we have that sort of charitable status. A reasonably small organization in the size of as an organization per se. We've got about 20-25 staff, but as I say, going 50 years, and that in itself is testament to some of the work we've been doing. So yeah, great organization to belong to.
Yeah, certainly. First, I want to know your background, Phil, like where you started in life and how you ended up CEO of Arthritis NZ.
Yeah, well, look, I'm the first to say I do not have any medical experience. So don't ask me any of those hard questions about really how all the body works. I've got a commercial background. So I have a background in business development and marketing, and have spent a lot of my time in that sort of commercial sector. And then slowly moved into a not-for-profit in sports, and then also in the university. And then finally have been here in Arthritis New Zealand for around 6 years.
What's your role at Arthritis NZ? What does the CEO role entail at that nonprofit?
I would laugh and say we have to do everything because a charity is a charity. You know, you've got to put your hand to the wheel, get really, down and into the real engine room. But again, look, it's as all CEOs, we've got to be able to look over the parapet. We've got to be able to look at what that landscape looks like and how we're going to negotiate that future. And in New Zealand at the moment, we're going through massive health reforms. So we're going from a sort of a system that was very centralized around hospitals to one now which is around primary care. So it's about preventative work, rather than waiting until you get really sick and then have to go to hospital. So that changes the way we engage. And therefore, as CEO, I've got to be able to look at that and go, so how do we adapt to that? And also, if you take things like COVID, how did we adapt in that space? Because suddenly what we were doing was no longer relevant. We couldn't meet. So how in that space were we working online and engaging with people and still being relevant? So a lot of that sort of big picture thinking, practical, how do we do things, but then also being prepared to do what I would call the hard graft and make things happen.
And let's talk about COVID. How did you guys adapt it to that?
Yeah, we're firstly lucky that we'd already set up our organization to work remotely. So when it finally did come, we were able to literally continue to work, and we had to be more, I suppose, positive about engaging people then. And I'm talking internally as much as externally. So we had to make sure we were continually engaging with our staff to ensure that they were right. So some people found it difficult to adjust, some didn't. But then we also started to do a whole lot of things that actually we wanted to do externally with our stakeholders. We started to ring people to see how they were. And the idea there is that people got lonely. And to actually have a phone call and saying, how are you? What's happening? They were really, really positive with that and responded really well, because that might have been the first phone call they'd had all week. And it sort of made a difference to their lives. So we're about how do we impact people really, what I would call, practically.
Tell us a bit more about arthritis. Who does it affect in the population? Why?
Yeah.
And why is it a big problem?
So it's a condition, and most people right around the world would know about arthritis, and people would say you've got to be old to have arthritis. So in New Zealand, we have 1 in 6 people have arthritis. So that's a big percentage. But the unknown thing is that, in fact, 50% of those are actually still of working age. So you've got a population that actually is still very active in terms of working and engaging. And if they've got it, what's that doing to basically stop them working to their fullest capacity? Main 3 types around rheumatoid arthritis, which is autoimmune. The other one is osteo, which again is probably the biggest proportion, and that's caused more by joints and trauma to joints. And the third out of the 144 different types of arthritis is gout. So gout arthritis. And that's again a one that people don't realize is actually part of arthritis. They're going, oh, you've got to be joking. But also we're trying to dispel the myths, because we have strong Maori and Pacific, so our indigenous population, have very strong rates of gout arthritis. And that can have a major impact on their lives. Because it is hereditary, it's not actually caused by food. Or it's triggered by food, not caused.
Yeah, and it's a crippling pain, like I told you about my uncle, Irish dude, really tough dude, never complains about anything, but yeah, internally he is suffering. I can certainly picture it from a guy that did ultra marathons, and the states that I am in, one day after an 80-kilometer run, for example, or a day after a 10-kilometer swim, you just feel like crap. Every muscle that you move is painful. The difference is that this is something that you don't have control in, and that is really disabilitating. It's like, yeah, this is happening to me. I don't have the full control of my body anymore. I feel pain just by moving. And us humans, we are our body, and we are our psyche as well. So if our body is constantly suffering, well, guess what? Your psyche is also very much constantly suffering. So very debilitating. I think that's the word. Is that an accurate portrait of what folks with arthritis go through?
Absolutely. Let's take osteo, which is really your joints starting to play really tough. You can't move as well, and the intuitive thing is to say I must rest. But in fact, actually, what you've got to do is you've got to get up there and move. You've got to actually build muscle mass to support it. And you've got to be really, sort of engaged and get that. Because also, as you mentioned, the mental health. If you're sitting there, I can't do, what's going to happen to you? You slowly go down that sort of spiral, that dark tunnel that basically says suddenly, and you tell yourself you can't do it. And of course, then you can't do it because you've told yourself. So by getting exercise, by getting movement is really, really critical for, particularly around osteo. They always say that, a person said that if we could reduce the weight in New Zealand by 5%, average weight by 5%, we would reduce osteoarthritis by 30%. So it's a massive, massive impact, because weight also has an impact on your hips, your knees, and your ankles.
Of course it does. The greatest example I've seen of that, like I often wonder why some fat people get really muscular ankle, and the why is quite simple, is because these ankles are supporting weights they shouldn't support. Yeah. And I guess that's a good example of this, and the body trying to balance in other forms. I'm curious though about the obesity rate in New Zealand. In Canada, surprisingly enough, it's like 30-ish%. In Mexico, it's just ridiculously high. I think Mexico is like top 5 in the world. It's somewhere around like 60 or 70%. How does obesity rate look in NZ?
Yeah, look, high, there's no question. Again, we're very similar rates. We've got the same sort of problems in terms of children, particularly going through those obesity. Then you've got your what we call comorbidities. So we work quite closely with the diabetes and people with heart disease, because again, a lot of those then transfer into those sort of situations. Stroke, from too much salt and too much sugar and so forth. So we've got, all of those problems that you've got. The difficulty, I just want to go back to my statement about, weight loss, weight and things like that. One of the hardest things is when you are got overweight is to lose. I don't make any sort of judgment on people who are overweight, because it is so tough. And particularly as you get older, it's actually the metabolism slows down and you yourself really struggle to lose weight. So I'm not sort of pointing the finger and going, oh, yeah, you're not doing anything. It's just we've got to find ways of actually engaging and actually breaking that cycle.
Right. It's not that you're not doing anything, is that you were not doing anything. So it's all accumulation. It's all negative momentum. That's not only physical, but also in the brain. The pathways to move are not there, like literally. It is harder for you to not move your body, because you haven't fired the muscles in that direction before. So what may look super easy to someone can be super hard for you. And is it accurate to say that, the comfort zone slowly kills you? For example, I can picture an elderly person that is just staying on the couch every day watching Netflix, and they before long, they need now they need a stick to move around, and then they can't even go up and down the stairs because they stop practicing. Does that happen often?
Yeah, look, I mean, the old thing, isn't it? Use it or lose it. If you're not using your muscles, you will lose them, and we know that atrophy of the muscles will just, they will wear away almost. And that's why we're saying the opposite. When you've got knee pain or things like that, you've actually got to be able to exercise and start to do it. But start to do it in a way that actually makes sense to you. Do it small. Don't suddenly go from zero to, I've now got to run a marathon. Do it in, if I can walk to the letterbox, or I can just walk around and do the vacuuming, all of those simple things that actually get you moving, and start to, and join a place where you've got, because social is really important too. Do it with somebody else. Don't just try and do it. You know what I mean? Don't try and do it by yourself.
Right. Make it a fun activity, or I don't know, with your kids, with your grandchildren's. That can be the dream opportunity to get in touch with them, get to know them, and really make two birds out of one stone, sort of. It's kind of interesting, like when you think about it, that this society, often we see these things on Facebook or TikTok. Oh, this 75-year-old just completed the marathon, or this 60-year-old lost 200 pounds. Just a reminder, guys, I mean, you can aim for the sky, especially if you have the personality for it. I'm that way, but statistically speaking, you don't want to aim for the sky and extreme change. Because, for example, if you do a marathon at 75, and you, especially if you haven't done it before, you're going to pretty much ruin your knees. That's not going to help you. So I think what we're talking about here is just increasing the odds of increasing the quality of life of someone. Because if I try to tell my wife's dad, that's like 72 or 73, to go do some exercise, well, quite ridiculous. I mean, the guy has his habit. He's him. He wants to enjoy the rest of his life. But what if I go on a walk with him on a daily basis, and I don't know, include a flight of stairs, be evil there, and bring him to places with like the flights of stairs. What do you think about these strategies to increase the quality of life of folks that are like on their way there?
Yeah, look, I think those are absolutely, you've got to make it fun. Why would you do something that you hate? I mean, I often see people, and this again is generalization, people who may be slightly overweight running. And I'm going, you're not looking like you're enjoying that. In fact, you're hating it. Every step of the way, you're hating it. Why wouldn't you walk fast? Actually, if you walk fast, then that would make a lot of sense in terms of this whole thing. And then you would start to start to increase gradually, really slightly, just a bit here, a little bit more, a little bit more. And suddenly what happens is you get better. Don't try and do things that you suddenly just hate. Do something you enjoy. To go with somebody, enjoy, have a lot of fun together, and then you won't actually realize you're exercising.
Yeah, and if you can, run fast towards a body of water and go swim in the ocean.
Yeah.
That's like probably top. So low impact on articulations. I do Apple Fit almost on a daily basis, and they have a modification for people with mobility issues, right? They call it. So it's like no jumps. It's really light movement. And even that, just to pump
low
up your
impact.
heart, can be
Yep.
really good. And that's 10 minutes, and it's fun. It's with music, it's with a trainer. But I think it can be challenging for folks of that category of age to use technology, right?
Yeah, no, I think lots of people say, folks don't use technology, particularly older people, 65, 70, 75. I don't disagree with that. We've seen a lot more. So COVID really helped that. You imagine, you're separated from your family, your grandkids. What was the first thing they got you to do? Was actually tune
FaceTime.
in and get on FaceTime. So what did that do? That changed the way that people saw technology. They saw it as an enabler, not a fear. So I actually don't think that people are that tech challenged, other than me. But there's a lot of people out there that actually can do it. So it's not. I don't think it's any. Get somebody to help you. Get somebody, local kids, to come and set it up for you, because it's about actually wanting to do it, wanting to change, and get better and feel better. And it's also this. It's what we're eating as well. It's
Right.
the whole thing. Actually, to be honest, exercise is one of the things. Yeah, you've got to do, but it's actually the core thing is change what you're eating. And become a heck of a lot more, I suppose, what's the word, where you understand what you're putting in, because as much as you think you can then walk it off, just get good stuff, get away from some of the processed stuff, try and eat things that are going to make you feel much better.
Yeah, in that case, revisit the recipes that your mom was making you when you were young, so in that case, we're talking about the 1960s, 1970s, when that food wasn't all processed and crap.
That's right.
My grandmother, she was making her own bread. She would make date cookies. She would make amazing spaghetti. These are somewhat simple recipes with not too complicated ingredients. She would make this Irish stew with potatoes. Oh man, I miss that one. And this is like food. This is real food. We're not talking about Wonder Bread. I want to know, as we wrap up, Phil, what are your goals for the rest of the year with Arthritis NZ? What are you focusing on?
Mentioned that the key thing here is around the health reforms. So we've got to understand what those reforms are and how we best adjust to that, and how we add value. So again, how we taking what we do and adding the maximum value. And I suppose I have a very simple thing. I want to work with the willing. So there's lots of people you try and work with and they go, oh no, I don't want to work with you. It's too hard. So I find people that want to work with us, and guess what? We make things happen. And I was saying before we got into this interview, also be prepared to make mistakes. I look at my team and say, if you're making a mistake, you've done it not for wanting to make a mistake. You're wanting to do it because you wanted to try something. And I'm all for that, and as long as you've got the right intent, guess what? Why wouldn't you? We can solve those mistakes. So for me, it's about pushing those boundaries, making things different. We need to keep thinking differently, because if we don't, we're just going to get the same result.
Love it, Phil. Where can people find out more about you and Arthritis NZ?
Okay, so don't need to find out about me, but find out about Arthritis New Zealand. Arthritis New Zealand.org.nz. So just look us up. Happy, we've got a whole lot of resources and things like that. Really keen to work with different organizations, both here in New Zealand and around the world. Really value, we can learn from each other. It doesn't mean to say it has to be arthritis. You can be doing something else and you go, hey, have you tried this? So I think there's a real value in sharing these opportunities.
Phil, thank you so much. People, that was Phil Kearney, CEO of NZ, Arthritis NZ, that is. I'm Charles, your host, CEO and founder of podpire.com. If you want to start